Good evening, everybody. We're going to make a start. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's the first parent information event of the half term. We're in half term 4 now. This half term, we have 6 weeks until the Easter holidays. I'm just going to make sure that you can all see and hear me by making sure that things are working. I'm just going to check a couple of buttons to make sure that things are all going to plan. Checking with my colleagues. They look like things are going to plan. Okay, we'll see. So we think we're up and running. The kind of key things for today, I want to reflect a little bit on last half term and pupil engagements and the quizzes and the assessments that pupils did at the end of the half term. Then I'll share with you a little bit about what we know so far about the plan for school opening up again. And then I want to think a lot about homework and making sure that we're using homework as carefully as possible to make sure children are learning as much as possible, both now, but also crucially when school opens again, because we've got a huge lot of catching up to do. So let's start by looking back to last half term. A huge thank you to all of the parents who've helped us make sure that children are able to continue learning every day. Our engagement with rote learning, taking part in live lessons, submitting assignments and then submitting quizzes has been huge, almost 100% across all of the year groups. And that's involved a huge effort. We know not everyone's had great access to the internet. We know not everyone's had great access to devices all of the time. It's a huge testament to how everyone's worked together to make that work. So thank you very much. We've got levels of engagement there which are higher sometimes than the attendance we've had when school's been open. And that's something we should all be very proud of. So thank you. Some 5 key people to say well done to. Isa in year 7, Haytham in year 8, Daria in year 9, Tarek in year 10 and Sabra in year 11. They were the children in each year group who achieved the very highest quiz scores through last half term. So well done to them. They should feel very proud of themselves, and we're finding a way to celebrate and reward them in the next few weeks. I also wanted to share with you this highlight across each year group, where we can see a huge number of children who've done very well in their quizzes. So these are children who've got the highest scores in their classes, or the joint highest scores in their classes. And compared to when we did this a few weeks ago, there's some of the names that are staying the same. So well done to those of you who've been able to maintain really high standards, but also well done to those of you who've made huge progress and jumped up to the top of the leaderboard. I'm really excited to see such a huge range of names there. Really excited to see particularly how well children in 9-3 have done, really successful, and particularly as well our children in year 11 who know how important their studies are at the moment. So great job to those people that have got really high quiz scores. We are definitely going to find ways to celebrate that when school reopens, but it's something you can all be very proud of, that we went into a very difficult time of a lockdown and having to learn online, and you're able to be really independent, really determined and really resilient. And in doing so, you're able to learn a lot and prove that you learn a lot by getting some really great quiz scores. So well done. What do we know about reopening? So we obviously all heard the Prime Minister's announcement earlier in the week, where he announced that schools would start to reopen on Monday, the 8th of March. Obviously, to do that safely and to do that well, a lot of very careful planning needs to be done. In the last couple of days, me and the team in school have started making those plans. I can't tell you now all of the details about how it's going to work. I will share with you as much as possible. What we know for definite is there'll be a staggered return to school. Different year groups will come back on different days, just like we do normally at the start of the school year in September, where different year groups come back on different days. The aim will be, though, to have all pupils back in school together at the same time by Friday the 12th of March at the latest. And I'll publish a really detailed plan with exactly what times children will be coming into school and on what days as early as possible next week, so that you have at least a week's notice around what's going to be happening in the following week. As part of coming back into school, pupils and staff are going to be tested for COVID regularly on site. And as you'll have heard in lots of the media, there'll also be test at home kits for you to have at home to continue testing pupils once a week into the future. Crucially, we're going to need your consent to test pupils and for them to take part in the testing. A few months ago, I shared with you a form you could fill in online to provide consent. I'd encourage many of you to go back and find that form and to fill it in, and I'll be sharing a link to it in my next parent update. We will also be posting home a hard copy paper version of that form, which your child can bring to school with them once school reopens. In terms of remote learning, I want to keep up the momentum. I want children to continue to study incredibly hard because I want them to feel very successful and confident when school returns. So remote learning will carry on next week, and it will carry on until all the pupils are back in school. So while school may reopen for some year groups on one day and not others, those children not in school will be able to continue learning because we'll still continue to provide remote learning. Live lessons, though, are going to end on Thursday, the 4th of March, so that we've got some time for teachers to plan and prepare for the reopening of the school. Parents will continue to get a weekly report card, both next week and in the following week. And moving forwards, we're going to try and use all of the tools, the Microsoft Teams, the quizzes, the assessments, the assignments, the report cards, to make sure that we've got a really clear and rigorous plan in the school for homework and children studying just as hard at home as they are in school. More on that to come in the future. I know one question many of you will have is about what's the plan for exams and assessments. The national announcement about exams for years 11 and years 13 is due tomorrow, and that will be telling us about how their GCSE and A-level and BTEC grades will be awarded. So obviously we'll hear the official announcement tomorrow. This time next week, I'll be able to talk you through our very detailed plan about how we're going to go about making it work. I think what we know so far, from what we've heard about what's going to be announced, it's going to be very similar to what I shared with you a few weeks ago. It's going to look a lot like last year in terms of it being based on something called centre assessed grades, which is where teachers and curriculum leaders in the school will review pupils' work, review their learning in lessons, review some assessments that they will do, and they will suggest and recommend a grade for that pupil in that subject, which myself and senior leaders will then review, sign off and approve and recommend that that's the grade that children are awarded. It'll all be based in school. There'll be lots and things that we want to share with you about how we're going to make those judgments, and hopefully I'll be able to start talking to you about that next week. So we want to think about homework routines. In just a moment, I'm going to hand over to Miss O'Connor, who will talk to you a little bit about how it's going to work. But the crucial thing is we've established really good habits in half term 3 during lockdown of children being at home, being able to learn. And one of the things that I know, and I've shared this with you before, is that children being excellent at doing homework and doing lots of homework makes grades go up. Because if we can add more time, if they spend total more time learning, then they're going to have more knowledge, more skills, and they're going to get better grades in their future exams. So I want to make sure that homework is something that's a big part of St Albans Academy moving forwards. We're going to start by making sure we've got homework around maths and reading 100% right. We've got good systems and good routines about it. And then we're going to think about how we can build on remote learning, add to it, and make what's happening in school and what's happening remotely match up together. So Miss O'Connor's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mr. Rimmer. So I'm going to start by talking you through what maths homework is going to look like now, whilst we continue with remote learning, and how that will continue through when we return to school, and then I'll speak through what the reading programme looks like. So in year 7, we're going to be using 2 platforms, one named ED, one named Hegarty Maths, and students are going to be set homework 2 days a week. It will be the same 2 days every week. Students will complete that and they will receive feedback instantly online. Teachers will then also have the chance to review the work that the students have completed and be able to give further feedback on that in the lessons. The great thing about these 2 platforms is that students will be assigned additional tasks if they want to explore it further. So we're building a routine that allows lots and lots of opportunity for students to continue with some independent practice also. In years 9, 10 and 11, it looks very similar. It's still using Hegarty Maths, but students will receive more homework. So it will be set 3 days a week and it's expected to last at least 45 minutes a day. Again, the feedback will be online, it will be followed up on lessons, and there'll be follow-up tasks for students to explore that further. As parents, you can support that work at home by providing a quiet space for the homework to take place and by helping to build that routine around it. Like I said, the homework will always take place on the same days. And so for Key Stage 4, for example, for years 9, 10 and 11, It's about creating a routine where there's always a moment on a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday afternoon for students to do that homework as soon as they're in from school. There's also a monitoring dashboard that you can look at on Hegarty, and you can check how are your children doing? How long have they spent on it? How many questions have they got right? Have they gone back to review any of those questions? And that allows you to be working with them alongside us in monitoring how much maths practice they're getting. The reading programme that we're looking at, we're rolling out to begin with in Key Stage 3. We're focusing on increasing opportunities for students to read independently because we know that it has an impact far beyond English. Students who read a lot score higher on tests in all of their subject areas. And it enables them to engage more with all of their subjects. So at Key Stage 3, the reading homework will also be set on a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday. It's going to take 30 minutes a day. It will involve some independent reading and then a short quiz. Just like the maths, that's going to be tracked the day after the homework so that we can have conversations with students about what they're reading and make sure that they're keeping on top of it and making the most of that opportunity. The quiz for the reading homework will follow the format that the quizzes have followed whilst students have been completing their learning remotely. So they'll have a Teams, they'll be using their laptop to complete it, and they'll have the opportunity to go back and improve on their scores just as they do currently. So all of those routines and those habits that we've invested in together, the pupils, you as the parents, us as the academy, are going to be continuing long after we return also. Just like with the maths homework, you can support that by providing that quiet space for reading and making sure that there's a regular time for it to be completed. You could also listen to your child reading. And from Monday, there'll be a section on the website that provides you with some tools so that you can ask some follow-up questions on the texts that your child has read. And we'll be providing that in a range of languages so that you're able to engage with your student and your child and their reading over a whole range of different texts. To support this, and so you know a little bit about the texts that students will be reading, we're holding another live event tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Details of that will be sent out after this meeting. But if you'd like to come along to find out what's the content of the books, what are the themes that are going to be explored, come along and you'll have a chance to ask us questions about them and hear from the teachers who'll be reading your children in their reading and find out more about it. To support with that, we're also asking that all Key Stage 3 students come and collect their books this week. You'll have received a text or an email about it, but it's really important that students have picked up their reading books from the Academy before Monday, so that they're ready to engage with the launch event on Monday at 3 o'clock, led by their form tutors. Again, those links will be sent out via email to students so that they can attend promptly. And as I've said, we're really excited about the fact that this is going to continue long after we return. So creating the habits now that will continue to serve us once we're back in school. I'm going to hand back over to Mr. Rimmer.
Okay, team. As we've done before, there's time now to try and answer any of your questions. You can type those questions into the question and answer function. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you all properly. Here I am, I'm back, and I'm going to open up the question and answer section, and you can type in questions and I will try and answer as many of them as possible. We'll give people a few minutes to think of their questions and to type them in. We've got one so far. that just tells us that the questions are open. It's Mr. Cole playing a trick on me, making me think I've got some questions before I've got them. It's all okay. Thanks, Mr. Cole. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Here we go. So what would happen if a child didn't want to be tested for coronavirus? I think it's a really good question, because I think that question will come up quite a few times. So while it is a question of parental consent, parents should make that decision rather than children. Parents should make the choice for their child. The kind of crucial thing to say is that if the child isn't tested for COVID, then, and all the other children in the class are, that's going to create quite an awkward situation, because that child's going to be the child that's possibly a risk. And that might mean that we need to make different situations at different times about what happens with that child. So I'd strongly encourage everybody to be tested. We're going to share all the information about COVID consent again. Have a read of that as a family, and I'm happy to speak to families individually about plans for COVID testing. Okay, let's see if we've got some more questions coming through. When do we need to collect the books by? We'd like you to come and collect them this week before the end of the day on Friday. The reception in the school is open between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So come any time between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock and they'll be ready for you. Good question about COVID testing at home and at school. What the government announcement has said is that 3 tests should happen at school in the first few weeks after children coming back. And then further tests should happen at home, which probably in our school, given where the Easter holidays are, will be after the holidays. So the first tests will be in school, after holidays at home. About children 18, children who are 18 or over, they can consent for themselves. They don't need their parents to provide consent. We'd still ask you to fill in the form. The form asks lots of other useful information that's good for us to have as a school, but it is up to you. The children can consent for themselves. How will teacher assessment work for year 11 and the GCSEs? There's nothing official yet. I think what we can say is as soon as we have got something official, we'll share it with you early next week. The main kind of things that I would reiterate are there won't be any one-off assessments. There won't be any this exam or this essay decides your grade. It will be a collective, a coherent decision, and the criteria that we use to make that decision we will publish just as soon as we've got it written, and I expect that's certainly before the Easter holiday, so we've got lots of notice and advance warning about what that criteria looks like. Okay. Good questions are starting to come through. Let's see what the next one says. Will the tests be voluntary? Will the school be forcing year 11s and year 13s to test regardless of voluntary status in the name of getting more test data? No, we can't force. We can't do a test without consent, because it's really not something that belongs to the school. The test happens in the school, but actually all the data and the information about the tests we fill in and it goes to the NHS. So we can't force anybody to be tested. It's completely a voluntary process, but it's something we very much are going to encourage people to do. Do children have to swab both their nose and their throat, or is the throat swab only acceptable? No, we've had lots of training about how the tests work. For the tests to be accurate, it has to be a test both of the tonsils at the back of their mouth. It's not down their throat, it's just the back of their mouth, and then one side of their nose. Vaccine, I think, is a different question. I think you probably mean the test. I can't tell you right now what would happen if your child doesn't take the test. One thing is, it's more likely that both they and their class would be sent home more often, because if there was somebody who maybe had a cough or a cold or hay fever, so the symptoms looked like they were COVID, we would have to say and guess that they were COVID and send them home, because we wouldn't be able to test to see if it was something else. So the downside of not being tested is that we won't know if there'll be more times that we have to send children home if they're not tested. And we don't want children being at home, being at school, being at home, being at school. Because although remote learning has gone very well, once all the children are back in school, it won't be a choice, it won't be an option to carry on learning at home, because the teachers can't prepare resources for home study and resources for in-school study. It'll be one or the other. So we want everybody to be in school. We want everyone to learn in school. That's really important. But if somebody isn't getting tested and they're maybe not well, or somebody in their class is not well, then we won't know whether they're not well because of COVID or because of something else. And so we'll have to send them home, and that'll be very disruptive. Okay, let's see what the next question is. How many days will the children have school? So in the first week, Monday the 8th of March, so that's not next week, it's the week after, children will come back on one of those days and then stay for the rest of the week. So children in year 7, for example, might come back on Tuesday, and then year 7 would be in school on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Children in year 8, for example, might come back on Wednesday and then be in school on Thursday and Friday. So I will share the plan of which day that different year groups will come back next week once we finalised it. After that, we'll have that week and then 3 more weeks of school before the Easter holidays. Okay, next question. Additional support during the Easter break. I think this is a really interesting question. So normally all schools normally run revision lessons during the Easter break. And those lessons are about planning and preparing for exams. They're about saying, we've had this 2-year course, and you're now about to do an exam about that 2-year course, which is going to test you on things that you haven't learned in class since the start of September in year 10, for example. And so it's been really important through the Easter holidays to run revision classes to help children remember what they learned earlier in the year. Now, once we've understood what the criteria will be and what the guidance is around how we come up with final grades, I'm hoping it won't be necessary to run extra study during the Easter break, because I'm hoping that actually that downside of exams where you have to do lots of cramming towards the end will be less essential, because we'll be able to look at lots of different pieces of information and pieces of data to make a judgment. So I can't rule it definitely in or definitely out, but my hope would be, particularly because we've had such a disruptive time, that we wouldn't need to do something different during the Easter holidays, particularly because part of the reason that schools are opening now is because the rest of the economy is closed and we don't want too many people in the whole community mixing. Obviously, the economy will be open in some ways, or more open over Easter. If we then have schools having lots of children as well, there's risks. So my hope would be, when we see the full process for how grades will be rewarded and the timeline, crucially, about how grades will be awarded, then Easter revision, that kind of rush, that cram of like practicing how to do exams, won't be so necessary. But we will have to see. The other thing I would say about Easter classes and any other kind of extra classes, after school classes and so forth, is actually the children who do have hard deadlines and do have urgent catch-up needs are going to be the very young children in year 7 who've missed almost all of their secondary school education. And it's going to be children in years 10 and years 12 who next year will have to sit exams, even though they've missed a lot of the first year of their courses. So there'll also be a question of prioritization. But as I said, I will publish a plan of what I think that looks like next week. Good, more to come. Will there be a summer school to catch up those who've missed out on education? So this was part of the announcement yesterday from the government around there may be some provision in the summer. It's not clear yet what is being suggested or what is being recommended. I think it links a little bit to my answer before, which is it's going to be very difficult to choose which children and which year groups and which classes to give extra help to. So we're going to have to think very carefully about how to make it fair. We're also going to need to reflect that for pupils and for teachers, it's been a very challenging year. So adding more time and more work to what's already been a difficult year is something I'm a bit nervous about. My priority is going to be getting school back running normally and well, so we can start catching up and learning very quickly. What a lot of the announcement about summer camps was previously was about the school being open for learning over the summer, but volunteers and tutors coming in to do the teaching and the education. I'd be very worried about that. I want to make sure our children are taught really well by their teachers, because when somebody else gets involved in the teaching, they might teach them a different method in maths, for example, that actually just confuses them when they get back to our teachers. So I don't know yet much about what the summer might look like. We're going to think about it really carefully in school, but my hope would be that actually there isn't too much happening through the summer for lots of different reasons. Okay, let's see what's coming next. Will the year 12s be assessed on the things they learnt this year when they return? Really good question. In all year groups, we're going to want to do assessments this year to see how much they've learnt and to see where they are at, so we can plan what to teach them in the following year. When school reopens, I don't want to do lots of assessments straight away. I think we need to have more children, more time, in lessons, in class, learning all together and continue with the curriculum. And doing assessments straight away isn't going to be helpful. What we will do is that before the summer holidays, at the end of the year, after we've had time back with our teachers, after we've had time to review all of our learning, at the end of the year, we will do a formal set of assessments and report the grades and the outcomes of those back to parents. Okay, let's see what's coming next. How are tests carried out? I'm not sure with that question whether we're talking about COVID tests or kind of curriculum and assessment tests. So I'll talk very quickly about both. COVID tests, pupils will do them themselves. They'll be given a swab. They'll be given instructions about how to use them. Somebody wearing lots of protective equipment will then take the swab from them, place it in some solution, and then half an hour later, that creates a signal which tells us whether they've tested positive or negative. In terms of curriculum tests, as I said, I don't intend to do many tests in the next few weeks. In the summer, both for those in year 11 and year 13, but for the rest of the school, there'll be some sort of assessment. For those in 11 and 13, those assessments will form part of the decision about their final grade, but it won't be the full picture of their final grade. For those in the rest of the school, that will just be information for us to have about where they've got to and how we can help them in the future. What if blazers don't fit anymore? Can the children come without? So we want children back in normal full school uniform. Hopefully the children haven't grown any more than they would do in a normal year. And so if your blazer doesn't fit now, well, it was never going to fit now, and we'd have always needed to have bought a new one. So children need to be back in normal school full uniform, because we need the school to feel back to normal. We don't want it to feel like some extra thing, some summer camp, some informal crazy time. It's serious business when the children come back. We've got a lot to do. We want the school to feel like it's a serious time. Full uniform, full equipment, normal school rules, working hard and getting things done properly. Okay, next question. Yes, we will carry on the days where children have PE, asking them to come in their PE kits. That's something that's worked very, very well this year. It saves a lot of time rather than having to get changed before and after lessons. I know it's also easier for children and parents in terms of having things available. So we will carry on with children coming in PE kits, but we will return to say what we spoke about before Christmas, which it has to be the St Albans Academy correct PE kit of the St Albans Academy t-shirt, the blue t-shirt that they wear. It has to be plain dark trousers or skirt on the bottom, or shorts. And if there's any jacket being worn, it needs to be plain. It needs to be a proper jacket and not a hooded top. Okay, next question. They're coming lots now, lots of fast questions. Let's have a look. Will exams be different for next year's year 11? No, I think that's really, really important. We don't know for sure, but I am 99% sure the next year's year 11 and next year's year 13 will do real, full, proper exams. And that's going to feel maybe a bit unfair, because it's going to feel like, well, we missed lots of school in the first year of our course, like we should have something different. But we have to recognise that everyone's going to be in the same situation, and we're going to have to work really hard and really fast to catch up and be ready to do exams at the end of year 11. Okay. The progress cards at the end of each week, I think that is something we've been thinking about a lot. We know that parents have really valued them. We've really valued them in school, being able to celebrate and recognise what children are doing. One of the reasons why that's been possible is because everything's been electronic. Everything's been in Microsoft Teams so we can get the information quickly. The things that I'm clear about is I definitely want to send parents more information than the school's been sending them previously, and I want to send it regularly. I think once school reopens, we're just going to have to think really carefully about what information that we share and how we get that information. I don't want the children doing lots of tests just for the sake of doing tests. So we're going to have to find a balance, but I'm really pleased that you value them. We're going to find ways of making sure that you get regular information about your child's learning and that it's clear and it's detailed just as it's been so far. So we're going to do our best. We're going to do some thinking about it, and hopefully you'll like what we have to show you. And I think, yes, we have been sending report cards each week, and I know some parents have been in touch saying we haven't got ours when they hear me talk about them. If you haven't been receiving one, there's two reasons perhaps. Either we don't have an email address for you. So if you've been not getting any emails from the school, including the report cards, that's because the email address we have doesn't work. So what I need you to do is either call the school to give us a new email address, or to email the school info@arksandalbans.org to tell us your email address, and then you'll start getting the report cards. The other problem might be, which we've had with some parents, is the email account that you have doesn't allow you to receive what's called bulk messages, because it's a bulk message because we're sending a similar message to so many parents. And it might be that we need a different email address from you to send the report card to. Either way, if you've not been receiving the report cards, please get in touch as soon as possible so that we can make sure you get them in the future, because it's something that we're going to want to do all of the time. The best thing to do is either email your child's head of year, email the school, info@arksandalbans.org, or call the school to tell us your email address, and we'll take things from there. If I'm shielding, will my child have to shield on the 31st of March? Oh, sorry, I've missed one out. Two together. If I'm shielding, will my child have to shield? And what about children living with vulnerable family members? It's a really good question. So in the first lockdown, and then when school reopened last time, the guidance changed a little bit about what children who are clinically vulnerable or children who are living with clinically vulnerable family members should do. There hasn't been any new guidance yet about how to manage children who live with people who are clinically vulnerable. I'm hoping that guidance will come out this week, and then we can make a decision. So that's something that I'm going to have to hold on to for a little while. And then I imagine on Monday, I'm going to write to all parents and publish online the plan for reopening. And I will plan at the same time to share guidance about what to do in those situations. I'm sorry, I can't tell you right now. Previously, the answer was that if the child wasn't clinically vulnerable, it was just someone they lived with, that they should come to school. But I'm not sure if that's still true. So we'll find out and we'll share it next week. It's a good question. Thank you. Right. Online payments. This is something we have talked about before around lunch payments in the future. So in the future, we're not going to have any money coming into the school. It's not safe to have the children carrying lots of cash. It's not hygienic to have lots of money in the school. It's not secure. Lots of reasons. We don't want any cash to come into the school. What children did previously is they bought money in their pockets or in their wallet or in their blazer, and they put it into a machine, and then they used their fingerprint to spend that money in the school canteen. That's not going to happen anymore. That machine is gone. What's going to happen in the future is parents will be able to top up an account online. It's called the iPay Impact System. Top up an account online that links to their child's fingerprints, and then the child can spend that money in school. We're really excited about that. We think it's going to make lots of things better. One of the things it's going to make better, it's going to make paying for things at lunchtime quicker and shorter queues in the canteen and things like this. But what we need is every parent to sign up and to log into the system and to download the app. I was going to spend lots of time this week talking about that and giving careful instructions about how to do it. I am not, because I think we need to focus on getting the school opened again, but you will be receiving some information both in the post and by email if you've not signed up yet about that process. Because crucially, so far this year, we've been providing lunches for free. After the Easter holidays, we'll be asking families to start paying again for lunches and for school food unless they're eligible for free school meals. Okay, next question about the laptops. Thank you. It's a really good question about the laptops. So the laptop that you've been provided by the school, in almost all cases, is a laptop that we want you to have and to keep at home. It is still the property of the school. So we might at some point ask you to give it back. There might be some days in the future where we might say to you, we need you to bring your laptop to school to use it in school today for something. But really, those laptops we want you to have at home because of the things Miss O'Connor was talking about. We're going to be setting more and more and more homework for children to complete online using the laptop. So it is there to keep at home for now. Okay, let's see if we've got any more questions. We've got a few more. If someone has COVID, would they have remote learning? Really good question. So it links to what I said about before, which is we want someone who's having to miss school because of COVID. Either maybe they've got it themselves, someone they live with's got it, somebody in their class had it, and so the class is at home. We'd want them to be able to carry on learning. The challenge is if the teachers are at school busy teaching the other classes, then they haven't got time to do the remote learning lessons. And so there's going to have to be a balance. So I think the answer to your question is yes, they would have remote learning, but it would be maybe less than what it's been like now. It might not have the live lessons in it, for example, and we wouldn't be able to check and follow up and maybe do the quizzes and the report cards in the same way that we have now. So yes, but it might not be just as good. Would year 11 assessments be too late to do at the end of the year to find out their final results? Really good question. So the best way to explain this is we don't know yet. What we're hoping to find out tomorrow when the government publishes it is the dates at which the final results have to be entered and recorded, and the process about how they get shared with parents. So we are going to assess the children. What I said about not wanting to do exams and tests straight away is we're not going to have formal assessments where they go into the sports hall and they do kind of proper long exams. Of course, in their lessons, their teachers are going to be quizzing them, setting them assignments, kind of setting them extended pieces of work to see where those gaps are. They're not just going to be formal exams, because I think there's a risk with formal exams that actually that's going to make children more nervous and more anxious, and then end up going to doing a bad job on them, and that's going to make them panicked and nervous about what their future grade might be. So we are going to assess children when they come back, but their teachers are going to do that in their subject areas rather than big formal exams in a sports hall. Okay, I've got a few more questions coming in, then we'll wrap things up. Well, the menu have changed from sandwiches. I knew someone was going to ask that question. So I think that depends on when we can open up the canteen and how much we can have children mixing. So we definitely want to open the canteen and we definitely want to change the menu. We're just not sure when we're going to have to do that yet. I think what I'd want all parents to understand is, although the sandwiches and the packed lunches, the fruit and the flapjacks and things that they get are cheap, and they're much cheaper than hot meals for the school, providing a lunch, a packed lunch like that for 900 children plus that we have in the school at the moment, every day of the year so far before lockdown, has cost the school a huge amount of money. And as a school, we want to be able to spend money on things that are going to help children learn, like teachers and books and resources and different things. And if we keep losing money and we keep spending money on providing lunches for free, then we're not going to be able to do some of the things that are going to help children make progress. So whether it's sandwiches or whether it's something else, we are going to ask parents to make a contribution towards the children's lunches unless they're eligible for free school meals from Easter onwards. I hope at some point it stops being sandwiches and starts with something more adventurous. But to start with, we would be asking for a contribution towards the packed lunches we are providing. OK, we've got 2 or 3 questions left. We'll rush through those and then we'll come to an end. If we're unable to celebrate Eid with the households, when our child's get the day off school to spend Eid at home? It's a good question, and it's going to put me on the spot a little bit because I've not been at this school before when it's been Eid. I've worked in another school where Eid was a big part of school life. So I'll probably put something more detailed in writing to you in the next few weeks. What I would say to you is, yes, I anticipate that children will stay home on Eid. How that's organised and how we go about it, I will figure out at another time. But yes, I would assume that they would be at home with you celebrating Eid on that day. What happens if you break the school laptop? Uh-oh, sounds like someone's broken the school laptop. You hopefully will remember when you came to get it, you signed lots of paperwork. 99% of the time, any breakages are very easy to fix. So the most important thing that you should do is bring it to the school as soon as possible, because we have people that we can work with to get it repaired very quickly. If it's completely broken and it can't be repaired, there will be a small cost to the family, but it's something we can talk about and something we can make sure is manageable. Crucially, we don't want anybody to be worried about telling us that it's broken, because we want to make sure that children can do excellent homework and excellent study at home all of the time, and they won't be able to do that unless they've got a working laptop. So don't panic, don't worry, we'll solve it together. Just let us know. How are parents' evenings being conducted in the future? That is a really good question. So obviously we haven't had any at all this year, which is a huge shame, because I think parents' evenings are really, really important and really valuable. We've heard lots of speaking to other schools, and obviously we had some time with year 11 parents earlier in the year talking to them, where we did some meetings like this via Teams, but where there was kind of Q&A live. So we might think about how we can use Teams and things like this. I definitely would like to have meetings with all parents and their children's teacher before the summer holidays, because so we've had at least one proper interaction this year, and we'll do our best to arrange something like this, and then we'll hopefully be able to make a plan that doesn't involve COVID for the future, which will involve regular parents' evenings. We might experiment with doing some of them online, but certainly we're going to get them back up and running in some form or another. Okay, I'm checking with Mr. Cole to see if he's got any final questions for me. He does. I think we're going to call this as the last question. What would happen if a member of staff had COVID? The same process for pupils and staff. It's about isolation. So when someone tests positive, adult or pupil, they have to themselves isolate. And then we have to ask the rest of their close contacts to isolate as well. And in our school, the way we've been defining a close contact, because it's not completely clear, is the class that they may have taught. Not always, depending on the class, depending on the size of the classroom and all of these things, we'd make different decisions. But normally, whenever somebody tests positive for COVID, whether that's an adult or a child, it also means other people having to be away from school as well to isolate, which is why the testing is so important, because we need to make sure that we don't have people in the school with COVID going into different classrooms, mixing with different children and spending time around the building. We need to identify who they are and have that one person away from the school rather than lots and lots of others. And that's why I'm going to ask as many of you as possible to complete the COVID consent form so we can get that right up and running. Okay, we're going to stop now. Really appreciate people joining these meetings. I'm really keen to make sure that parents and families who aren't so confident using the internet, using email, aren't missing out. So if you do know other families and you speak to them in the community and you know that they're not accessing the report cards or these meetings or emails from school, please do encourage them to get in touch, and we will help them get everything they need. We'll help them set up an email account if we need to. We really want to make sure as many families are communicating with us and are enjoying that communication as much as possible. I will write to you all probably again on Monday morning with the details of our reopening plan, trying to answer as many of the questions I've not been able to answer here today. And then on Wednesday, you'll be able to ask me lots of questions about that reopening plan, and we'll have had the government announcement then about exams at the end of the year. And I hope I can speak about that next Wednesday too. Thank you for your time, everybody. Goodbye.